What's going on, guys? Jay Hoyt back with you today. Today we have a very cool video. But first we have some Division 1 gameplay in the background. However, we're going to be talking about the 2016 NHL Draft. It was this past weekend. I was very lucky to attend this year. Very fun event, had a lot of fun, and let's get right into it. So going in, we're going to be talking about Ottawa, of course. You know, that's a team I know a lot about, and you know, that's kind of the main topic of today's video is, you know, the grade review and just a whole draft review of what Ottawa did. So going in, Ottawa ended up having 6 picks. They had rounds 1 through 6 all, you know, locked up and didn't trade any of them except for the 7th round pick, which was in the Shane Prince deal. So the first round pick ended up being number 12 overall. And going in, Pierre Dorion, the Ottawa GM, said they didn't want to trade that unless they got, you know, a pretty good deal for it. So at number 12, Ottawa, you know, was picking right after New Jersey. However, they ended up making a trade. So Ottawa ended up trading the 12th overall pick and a 3rd round pick this year, which ended up being, I think, 80 overall. I'm not exactly sure on that one. But it's a 3rd round pick this year in exchange for the 11th overall pick. So you gave up a 3rd round pick to move up 1 pick. So unless New Jersey wanted Ottawa's draft pick, you know, the guy I'm going to talk about in a second, then I didn't see the point of that trade. So Ottawa trades that pick, you know, kind of questionable, give up a 3rd, kind of stupid. They end up picking the big 6'6" playmaking, two-way forward young guy in Logan Brown. Now, if you don't know who Logan Brown is, a young kid who came from the juniors that is a big, like I said, playmaking two-way forward. His words, not mine. But he seems to be a pretty good young player. You know, he's got some playmaking ability, even though he's 6'6", which is insane. He says he kind of models his game after Joe Thornton, but we all see how he's going right now. But, you know, if this turns out to be a good pick, then, you know, I'm not going to be mad about it, but the pick itself is kind of questionable. So now going in, Ottawa, you know, obviously made their list, and when, you know, any fan looks at their team, or even when, you know, a YouTuber looks at their team, or hockey people at all look at their team, what do they need? If you don't say defenseman, then I'm kind of questioning you. Because going in, they had a bunch of forwards and a bunch of skilled guys that, you know, are in the system, or, you know, they could sign that haven't played yet. But they don't choose to sign them until literally like 4 years after when they should, right? But then, you know, you're looking for defense, and then you trade up and get a guy like Logan Brown. And like I said, I'm not saying Logan Brown is bad, but to have 4 or 5 defensemen right around, you know, the number that you want is very, very frustrating to see that. Now, I didn't actually go to the 1st round. I ended up going only to the 2nd round, which was kind of cool because at the arena, they have like the security entrance to, you know, where all the GMs, the, you know, the scouts, the coaches, all those guys go in, go through security, you know, go onto the floor, get ready for the draft, right? Well, they had a little gate outside of it where, you know, fans could go to get autographs and pictures, and I actually met up with Pierre Dorion, the Ottawa GM, and saw, you know, Daniel Alfredson, you know, Ottawa legend, and a bunch of other GMs, some famous people, including Joe Sakic, Keith Tkachuk, Paul Kariya, you know, a whole bunch of guys that, you know, you'd think you never really meet, but they were there. I met them. Very fun time. So when I got the chance to talk to Pierre Dorion, it wasn't just a, you know, hey, how you doing? You know, good luck in the draft. You know, I support you. You know, whatever you do. It was kind of like a joking around. Hey, you should have taken it. Or I was kind of hoping you were taking a defenseman yesterday, and Jake Bean, who ended up going to Carolina. And he just kind of laughed it off when I said it. And I said, any idea who you're taking today? And he said he was taking a forward. So he didn't lie to me. They ended up taking a young Swedish guy in Jonathan Dahlin at 42 overall. He basically is a young Swedish guy with some raw skill. Going to be a few years before he gets over to the pro scene. But, you know, if it works out, then that's a pretty good pick. So going to the 3rd round, like I said earlier, they traded it to New Jersey. So they didn't end up trading any picks in the 3rd round, other than that one, obviously. But what kind of questioned me is you don't have a 3rd round pick, and a bunch of scouts were saying, you know, the skill drops off in the 2nd round a little bit. But there was a lot of names there that I think could have benefited a lot of teams, especially Ottawa, and they didn't end up trading them or trading for them or trading for a pick to get a certain player. However, you had two restricted free agents in Patrick Weirkoch and Alex Chiasson, right? They went in saying they were going to check their options, or they were going to see if they would fit into the team, because they didn't want to pay the money that the qualifying offers were, basically, and they didn't think they were worth that much, so they wanted to trade them, get something out of them. And they're both young players, so they're going to fit in somewhere, but not in Ottawa. So you have two guys you wanted to trade, and doesn't really seem to be an interesting conversation that you had at the draft. Now, I did see him, I should say not him, but so going into the draft, Ottawa basically said they wanted to trade Alex Chiasson and Patrick Weirkoch because they weren't really gonna fit into the team next year. They didn't want to pay him the money that their qualifying offers were, and they wanted to trade them. Now, what the price was for them, I'm not exactly sure. I would love to know that answer, but it was probably like a 3rd round pick for Chiasson, maybe like a 2nd round pick, and maybe a prospect for Weirkoch. Only the reason I give a very different one for Weirkoch is he could be honestly a realistic top 4 defenseman for a bad to average team. Now, he's 25 years old. He's still got some potential under him, but like I said, he just had a really bad year this year, bouncing around. He's supposed to be, that top 4 guy playing with Cody Ceci. They're supposed to, be this young duo that was supposed to do really well, but ended up not working out. So they traded for Dion Phaneuf and, basically jump-started Cody Ceci's, I don't want to say career, but basically jump-started his season, because at the time he only had 5 points. I don't remember what he ended up finishing with, but he did a lot better with Phaneuf than without. So you had two guys you wanted to trade, didn't end up trading them at the draft. Took a bunch of other younger kids who's probably going to be a few years before they even do anything or you hear about them at all. But, young guys, obviously you want to develop them as much as you can before you bring them out to a pro scene. But, looking at the AHL as a development league, and you don't really bring, young guys over to play, kind of weird. So going through the draft, you draft your players, you go after the draft, you still got two guys you want to trade. Now, I don't think you could have traded them right afterwards, but you needed to qualify them or do anything with them in order to keep them or have some rights over them at all. So they ended up making a trade. Now, it only included one of the players that were restricted free agents, in Alex Chiasson. Now, like I said, I don't know what the price was, but I'm guessing it was like a 3rd or even a 4th round pick. Maybe a prospect in there. Now, like I said earlier, I think Ottawa needs defense more than anything. But it was, they didn't really trade for one that really, stood out. Now, Chiasson ended up going to Calgary in exchange for a guy that's been playing the AHL. He's 22 years old and hasn't really done anything. So the trade itself didn't really make sense in that fact. Because when you want to trade for a player, you want to trade for a guy that's, probably going to play in the AHL next year. Maybe could, fight for a spot within, 2 years, being 22 years old. And didn't really... See, the trade just doesn't make sense. They traded for a young defenseman that has played 200 years. 200 years? That's a long time. 200 games and hasn't really put up any points. So you wonder, what type of player is this guy going to be really? And what's he going to be for your team, whether he's going to play in the AHL or if he's just going to be one of those, rotation guys that you want to throw in because he's young and doesn't really have playing time somewhere else. So a couple of questionable moves by Ottawa going into the draft with the trading up. Now, trading up's fine. I'm not, debating that. But when you trade up one pick and get a guy that you probably could have got at your original pick or gotten, a defenseman like, a lot of people think you need, and you don't trade for those, it's kind of interesting. But, going after the draft, wanting to trade this guy anyway, but then all you get some young defenseman that doesn't really do anything in the AHL. If you don't do anything in the AHL, now I'm not saying the AHL is easy, but if you expect someone to do really bad in the AHL and then they expect to bring them up and they do really well, they're probably not going to turn out as a good player for you. So after the draft, you know, you were going trading Shie-san, so you still got Weir Kachu. They didn't end up qualifying because it would cost him $2.7 million, and obviously, like we said, he's not worth that right now. So he's going to end up going to unrestricted free agency, I'm pretty sure, and not get anything for him. So now you give up what could be a top 4 defenseman, and you didn't really get anything for him whatsoever. Now what you could have gotten was a prospect, maybe a couple prospects, a 1-for-2 deal, maybe a pick and a prospect, something interesting to, you know, want to make that trade. But you didn't. So now going in, like I said earlier, they're going for, you know, a defenseman to fill the 5 through 8 role, and they probably want to get maybe a role player that could play in the second line, maybe even first at times if he's doing well, and could basically play from the first to third lines, fourth, you know, if he's, you know, struggling a little bit. But I want to save, you know, the offseason and the signings for a different video. So if you guys did enjoy, or, you know, you have different opinions than what I do, please leave it down in the comment section below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new. Anyway, guys, I'll see you later.